What's going on, Dub Nation? You're watching Warriors Today by Chat Sports, and on today's show, listen, we all know this. We don't think the Golden State Warriors roster right now is in a position to really contend in the West, really stacks up against those top teams in the Western Conference. So the only way to make sure that is the case is to go out there and make a trade. So I have 4 updated trade targets. Now, not my first trade targets, nothing that came straight from my dome. These are coming from the guys over at Bleacher Report. So I thought to myself, why not just dissect these trade targets today and see if any of these names are realistic or any of these names would make Golden State a true contender in the Western Conference. But before we get into all of those, if you think this Golden State Warriors roster needs to improve with a trade, with the free agency signing next summer, it doesn't matter. If you think this Warriors team is not good enough right now to compete for an NBA championship, go on ahead and like today's video. Show Mike Dunleavy that he needs to make a move for this Golden State Warriors roster, and we'll get started with today's show. So let me preface this, right, because I see it in the comment section all the time. You guys don't want to give up Jonathan Kuminga. You don't want to give up Brandon Podziemski. Now, Golden State has shared that sentiment. They have not wanted to give either one of those two players up, and they have held both of them out of trade talks this summer. Well, where did that land them? They didn't get Paul George. They didn't get Lauri Markkanen. Now, to be fair, if you did offer one of those guys, there's no guarantee that either one of those teams would have taken your deals. But it probably would have sweetened things a little more. Probably would have made it a little more likely that you might have landed one of those big fish this summer, and you didn't. So if you want to make a move that makes you a true contender in the Western Conference, think about this. You're probably going to have to give up a guy like Jonathan Kuminga. I don't think Golden State's ever going to give up Brandon Podziemski with how much they love him and how much resources that they're putting in to him this season. So a guy like Kuminga with an expiring contract, hitting free agency next year looking for a big payday, he might have to go if the Warriors want to land one of these big fish. Let's start with the big fish number 1, and that is Jimmy Butler. Now, we're not going to touch on him too much. We talked about him at length yesterday because now there is reported interest from Golden State on a Jimmy Butler trade. According to Sam Amick of The Athletic, they made calls this summer potentially on a Jimmy Butler trade as his relationship with the Miami Heat has trended in the more sour direction than it is positively, as he's expecting a $113 million extension for 2 years following this season. Now, why do I bring up Jimmy Butler? Because he's being brought up by Golden State. I think he is the most realistic trade candidate for Golden State to make. That puts them in that category with Minnesota. That puts them in that category with Dallas and OKC. I do think that Jimmy Butler is a possibility to come to the Golden State Warriors, so that's why I'm talking about him first here. Now, why would he vault Golden State to championship contending status? Because of the way that he rises in the postseason. Since 2019, when he joined the Heat, I mean, you can see it here. Now, the statistical increases aren't jumping off of the page. Obviously, over 3 points in the scoring department is great. But really what you're seeing from Jimmy is an improved jump shot, an improved focus on scoring the basketball. Because in the playoffs, defenses can kind of focus in on their role players on the Miami Heat and kind of make those guys beat you. Jimmy Butler goes out there and takes it in the postseason. And honestly, as far as the player that Jimmy Butler is, he literally goes and takes it. One of the best isolation players in the league. Now, what have we been saying all summer long? Maybe this doesn't fit with the traditional way the Golden State runs their offense. Maybe this doesn't fit on the 2015, 2016 Warriors type of teams. But on this current Golden State roster, Golden State needs a player that can go out there and initiate. A player that can go out there and get his own jumper. We haven't seen that ability from Jonathan Kuminga. Brandon Podziemski's only heading into year 2. And those are the guys that you're probably going to shoulder the weight on to score right after Steph Curry the most points this season. Jimmy Butler can go do that on his own. He was 18th in the NBA in isolation frequency. And as far as players who went into ISO and got to the free throw line, Jimmy Butler was the best at those. So he can generate points whether he's putting the ball in the bucket or not. He's one of the best isolation players in the game. And I think for a team that really lacks that second scoring punch and somebody who can go create his own shot, Jimmy Butler is going to be that guy. And as far as we know, he's the most realistic option for Golden State right now. So let me ask you guys, should the Warriors trade for Jimmy Butler? He's the only notable name that's circling in trade rumors right now. Should the Warriors trade for Jimmy Butler? This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video, so YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here. Take the time that they give you there to go down in the comment section and type Y for yes or type N for no, because I want to get a pulse from Dub Nation on whether or not you want Jimmy Butler on this team or not. Next up on the Golden State Warriors trade target list is not as sexy of a name as Jimmy Butler. but maybe just as fashionable of a name. Shout out to Kyle Kuzma's fits. Kyle Kuzma from the Washington Wizards. And this is a guy who, in the sense of Jimmy, is going to provide that second scoring punch. Arguably a better regular season scorer than Jimmy Butler, per se, because Kyle Kuzma, that's really all he does, putting up empty stats over in Washington. And speaking of, Washington could be a pretty bad team this year. The Warriors still need a second scoring option. And this is a guy who you could trade for send a 1 first-round pick and the contracts that you're really trying to get off the books, like a Gary Payton, like a Kevon Looney, and a Moses Moody over to Washington. This deal could get done like that. And in my opinion, Kyle Kuzma is honestly probably the 1 or 2 best scorers that you could get out there right now. That's most realistic to trade for. I mean, he's a 20-point per game scorer ever since coming over to Washington. And yeah, he's not going to be the most efficient guy, but guess what? I think if he enters this Warriors lineup, he is going to turn that corner efficiency-wise. He's playing on one of the worst teams in the NBA right now. Defenses are keying in on Kyle Kuzma. But is he going to be the focal point of defenses if he comes to Golden State? I think not. I think Kyle Kuzma is a nice complementary piece next to Steph Curry. Do I think he necessarily raises this team's ceiling to championship level? No. But at the end of the day, they need somebody like this who can go create his own shot. Kyle Kuzma has shown the ability to create his own jump shot over the last couple of seasons, and he can still do it off the catch as well. So I think he fits in the Warriors' offense and be a nice complementary piece next to Steph Curry, but might not raise this team's championship ceiling. Now we have 3 more trade targets to get to in just a moment. But before we do, I got to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, and that's our daily fantasy sports partner, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you guys got to do is pick a 2 to 6 player stat projection lineup and just pick more or less on each player's stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. This football season, they're giving you some sick deals on Prize Picks. Every football week in September, 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free dubs. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Shout out to Green Day. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to watch games. And the best way to watch games this upcoming basketball season as well is they already have season-long projections for the basketball season. And I had to tap in on Prize Picks. Give me the more on Stephen Curry on 26.5 points per game. I think he's going to have to carry a lot of weight for this Golden State Warriors roster, especially if they don't make one of these big trades that I'm talking about in today's video. So give me the more on 26.5 points per game. Zachary Riza-Shea. I don't have high hopes for the #1 pick. I thought it was kind of a weird pick by Atlanta, and I don't even think he's going to eclipse that 10-point per game mark. So give me the less on 10.3 points per game this upcoming season. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the free throw merchant. We know he's still going to be getting buckets in OKC. Give me the more than 30.6 points per game this upcoming season. You can tail my picks. You can fade my picks. Just make sure you do it at Prize Picks. And the best deal that Prize Picks is offering right now is if you download the app and use code CLNS, that's CLNS, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Next up on the list of Warriors trade targets, given out by Bleacher Report, not given out by me. Just want to preface that again. Malcolm Brogdon. Now, Malcolm Brogdon's had a bit of an interesting career. He's an incredibly efficient guy that we've known basically for his entire tenure in the NBA. But he's had a couple of stops over the past couple of years. Hasn't been able to really find his footing, find a home in a specific location over the past couple of seasons. I mean, he was with Boston where they tried to make the championship push, and then he got shipped over to Portland and then Drew Holiday trade, and honestly was almost actually shipped over to the Clippers when the Celtics ended up trading for Kristaps Porzingis. Remember, Malcolm Brogdon was supposed to be the piece that went away in the Kristaps Porzingis deal, not Marcus Smart. But what held that up? Malcolm Brogdon's health. He has not been able to stay healthy consistently for long stretches over his career so far. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality. Now, when Malcolm Brogdon is on the court, he is very, very good. He is incredibly efficient, and he fills up the stat sheet in a variety of ways. I mean, if you date back to the 2018-2019 season, Malcolm Brogdon was a 50-40-90 guy. That's a term if you're incredibly efficient. If you're with like the Steve Nashes of the world that shoot 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. And he's had multiple seasons elsewhere throughout his career that have mirrored those numbers, just not eclipsed them. A career 39.1 three-point shooter. I mean, Malcolm Brogdon is incredibly efficient, but is he going to be enough for this Warriors team? We know they need a backup ball handler, but in my opinion, with his health being the concern that it is, and I don't know, him getting older in age, he's been in the league, 8 years now, spent 4 years in college, so he's getting up there in age. He's got like arthritis and stuff in his joints. I'm just not in on Malcolm Brogdon at this point for Golden State. I think they could find somebody better. I think they need a backup ball handler, but I just don't want to take the risk when you already have a guy like Gary Payton Jr. on the roster who, let's be honest, is not available more often than not. Now, oh boy. While we're on the topic of health, I guess we're going to move on to Kawhi Leonard here for Golden State. Now, I got killed in the comment sections when I brought up a Kawhi Leonard trade a couple of weeks ago. But let's not kid ourselves here. Kawhi Leonard would raise the hell out of Golden State's ceiling as far as becoming a championship roster if he's healthy. While we're on the topic of health, Kawhi Leonard has not been able to stay healthy. We just saw it as little as recent as this past postseason and into the summer when he was supposed to play for Team USA. He just couldn't play out there. Now, granted, he was healthy, I guess, for Team USA play, but the Clippers decided to take him out for him to be ready for this upcoming season, which he has not been for, really what seems like his entire Clippers tenure. I've never seen consistent play out of Kawhi Leonard. He's eclipsed 60 games like one time his entire Clippers tenure, missed an entire season with a torn ACL, and he's just getting up there in age, man. I'm honestly, I would love Kawhi Leonard on this team. I think he makes Golden State a legitimate championship contender, but is he even going to play in the postseason? That's really the million-dollar question with Kawhi. Last up on this list, you knew he was coming, LeBron James. Now, to be fair, this cannot happen for a while, or I guess it could happen this season, but are the Lakers really going to trade LeBron James? Probably not. But what we can hope for as Warriors fans, we can hope for is a Laker implosion. And I think we all want that regardless. Lakers need to be hovering around that 500 range or below, facing a spot where they might not even make the playoffs. And honestly, it's going to be up to this guy, LeBron James, if he wants out of LA or not. I mean, he just had Bronny sign there. I don't think there's any chance that LeBron and Steph team up this season. But what it does feel like to me is that Steph and LeBron have been thinking about the end of their careers as they both near them. And they're like, listen, we want to play together because of the success that we've had on the court previously. We finally got to play meaningful basketball together this summer, and they absolutely lit it up together. I mean, yeah, look at these numbers from a pure, raw NBA standpoint. They're not great. But from an Olympic basketball standpoint where there's, you share the ball amongst 12 other All-NBA players, and you're playing a slower game, slower pace, less spacing, I mean, these are phenomenal numbers. Steph Curry nearly shot 50% from three, and LeBron is shooting 67%, hitting 2/3 of his shots because he can just bully his way to the rim. These guys complemented each other perfectly this summer. LeBron was initiating the offense while Steph got to work off ball. And how beautifully would that work in a Steve Kerr offense for Golden State? I'm looking for this to be what these two guys are up to at the end of their careers because, guys, as basketball fans, as basketball purists, we deserve greatness teaming up together. So down the line, this would be my number one trade target. But as of right now, Jimmy Butler seems to be the most realistic trade target for Golden State. Now, with that said, I want you guys to pick one to trade for. Now, keep in mind what you have to give up to get each one of these guys. I think you'd actually have to give the most up to get LeBron James, obviously. But next, I would say Jimmy Butler, then Kawhi Leonard due to his health concerns, then Kyle Kuzma. I think Kyle Kuzma, you don't have to give up a guy like Jonathan Kuminga to go get him. For other guys like Kawhi Leonard, you might have to, but I would push back on that if I were trying to make a deal with the Clippers. They also don't look like they want to make a deal with you based on what happened this summer. So maybe that's just a pipe dream, trying to get Kawhi to the Bay Area. Let me know who you would like to trade for by typing JB for Jimmy Butler, LBJ for LeBron James, KK for Kyle Kuzma, or KL for the Claw Kawhi Leonard. And that will do it for today's edition of Warriors Today by Chat Sports. Thank you so much for making it to the end of today's video. If you have made it to the end of today's video, type real one down in the comments. I'm trying to see who the realest ones on the channel are. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we'll be covering this Warriors team like nobody else on YouTube all season long. Season's less than a month away. Stick with us. We'll see you in the next one. Let's go Dubs.